Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Classic Physique Pro. Today's guest is Eric Abelon. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, my man. So I'm really excited to chop it up with you. You just competed in your pro debut in Toronto here just a short couple weeks ago. So I'm really looking forward to touching base on that, kind of seeing what your mindset is from your pro debut. But before we get to that point, Eric, I want to ask you, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
All time. Kevin Levrone is probably at the top of that list, followed by Flex Wheeler and Paul Dillett. Those three pretty much kind of more so Kevin Levrone. I want to kind of like very mimic that that whole physique, you know. I kind of admired that whole he was very notorious for taking these long breaks and for somehow getting into shape toward the Olympia. And like, I want to see if I can like kind of push my body to those limits, but be a little bit more dedicated with it, you know. But I really I was really fascinated with like his training philosophy and how he kind of like approached everything with like a very do or die mindset. So, you know, Kevin was definitely at the top of that list.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper on that. So first of all, do you remember kind of the first time that you came across Kevin Levrone, like his physique or him training? Was it on YouTube? Was it in a magazine? And then second, why does his kind of approach of taking that extended time off and then kind of going balls to the wall for the Olympian for competition season, why does that specifically kind of appeal to you, Eric?
The first time I saw a picture of Kevin Levrone, this was like early, I think it was early 2000s. I think I saw a clip of him on the Olympia. It was I think the 99 Olympia is where I saw. Yeah, and you know, to him, that he just had such a round look, and all his aesthetics just appealed to me. And I just wanted that superhero look that he kind of emphasized. You know, Ronnie was a freak on his own, you know, but I didn't want to look like a freak. I wanted to look like a superhero. And to me, like, that's what Kevin like kind of looked like. As for his training and his balls to the wall and this notorious long breaks, like it's so long that he didn't even look like a bodybuilder at the time. And then all of a sudden just kind of blossom out of nowhere, you know what I mean? Like a flower into spring or whatever. I wanted to kind of emphasize that into my training because I just think that the way you approach that is like, it's very do or die. It's very like last chance. And it's very like, you're going to make it or you're not. And, you know, and I think because he put that into his training and into his diet, his regimen, he turned it off and on, you know. And when he turned it off, he turned it really off. And then once he turned it back on, it was like there was no going back, you know. It was completely on. It is what it is. So that's what I kind of want to do with like my whole bodybuilding career, but at a more consistent level, you know, to see how far I can really push.
Fascinating, man. Love that. Okay, so let us know or tell us, Eric, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, for sure. At what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
I didn't start lifting weights until probably 21. And at that point, it was more like when I say lifting weights, it was like actually lifting weights. It was like curls and push-ups. And, you know, I didn't really like go to a gym or anything. For an entire year, I literally just spent doing body type exercises and just curling with like, you know, like a 10 or 15 pound dumbbell in my room. And that was it for an entire year until I told myself that, you know, I'm not going to go into a weight room until I kind of look like I've been hitting the iron a little bit. So I just stayed in my room. And then after about a year of progress, I finally got myself a gym membership. And even then, 2 or 3 years into that, it was still just lifting weights. You know, I didn't really know what I was doing. All I knew was that everyone knew the basic knowledge of bench press, deadlifts, and squats. So that's literally what I did, a few with some curls here. And like before I knew it, you know, my body started to change at a very rapid level because I started to read more about dieting. How did these guys eat and everything? So I started eating more caloric surpluses. I started to eat more. I started to manage my macronutrients more with proteins and carbs and everything, how to eat like a bodybuilder. And then, you know, I started to see more changes. And then I was sitting there going like, but how did they start getting more, the changes start getting more dramatic and rapid. So then I started to read more about sleep, and it's like, oh, okay. So these guys are actually like napping and sleeping throughout the day. So then I started prioritizing my recovery and everything. And that's when everything kind of took off. So I started training, just lifting weights. And then it turned into like being a bodybuilding gym bro without actually bodybuilding. And then sooner or later, I started to look the part. And then that's when I started people coming up to me and be like, hey, do you do shows? Do you compete? I'm like, no, I haven't. So then I started to dick around with poses and everything. And then, you know, this went from all the way from like 2014, 15, all the way up into all the way up until 2018, where I actually had a coach actually approach me and go like, listen, you have some serious potential. Here's my card. Let's talk. And then it led into me doing my very first show only in 2019. And then fast forward, here we are now.
All right. So we're going to, before we kind of get into all things bodybuilding, we're going to take a step back. Now, before we kind of get into your upbringing and your childhood, Eric, I want to kind of ask you about what you said. You said you kind of started like doing some curls in your room. And you said you wanted to kind of get to that point where you look like you had been working out before you joined a gym. Can you expound on that? Because that's kind of a unique perspective.
You know, when because I noticed like in the magazines and everything in the gym, like everybody looked just huge and rugged, and everyone looked like superheroes and everything. You know, everyone looked like a bodybuilder basically. And at that time, you know, never being in a gym, that was my perspective. My perspective was like, before I become a bodybuilder, I have to look like a bodybuilder before actually going into the gym. So that's why I just stayed in my room and I just like curled these 15-pound dumbbells and did my push-ups and everything. And, you know, bench press with my 75-pound set. And it just I just did everything I could to make the resistance and the training harder until I eventually started to look like at least some sort of athlete of any kind. Because I was skinny, you know, I was like 115 pounds at the time. And, you know, I was a small guy. And then finally, I just a whole year of that training and I bulked up to about 130. And I was like, okay, so I look relatively fit. I'll be, you know, 130. There's still girls out there that way heavier than me. But it worked out the confidence enough for me to actually purchase a gym membership at a YMCA. And, you know, we all got to start somewhere. But that was my start.
No, I love it, man. That's why I love this podcast and like having all of you awesome athletes and coaches on, because you're right. We all start somewhere and we see all of your physiques and we see the results of the coaches on Instagram and through social media. And it's kind of a lot like yourself. Back in the magazine day, I was the same thing. It's like you look at these professional athletes or these top NPC athletes and you're like, you know, how I'm nobody, I'm nothing. How do I get there? And it's so cool to hear that we all have a starting point. We all have a story behind the muscle. And that's why I love hearing it. So that's super cool. Now, I want to take a couple steps back, Eric, before we dive headlong into all things bodybuilding. Tell us a little bit, please, Eric, about your upbringing. Talk about where you grew up, what your childhood was like. Talk about maybe some positive influences or maybe some life-changing experiences from that childhood up to about high school, and then we'll transition from there.
Okay. Let's see. For as far back as I can remember, school was not like the number one priority. If I could describe the kind of student I was, I was a C, a C plus student. You know, does that make sense? It wasn't like, oh, hey, you know what, I'm gonna get the honor roll. It was more like a, let's do enough to get by. So throughout my entire scholastic years, that's what I did, you know, just enough to get by. And my parents accepted it, you know. I think my parents kind of understood the stresses that I was going through, especially, you know, as a child, because my father was military. So every 4 years we would move around. And, you know, I would say I spent about half of my childhood in America, and the other half I would be in like Europe or something. You know, I lived in 4 years in Sicily, and you know, a lot of my childhood memories started usually come from that place, because I think that was the happiest I've ever been. That was you know, growing up in like a paradise like Sicily, and experiencing a different culture and everything. It really kind of made me see the world differently. And you know, after growing up over there and coming back to America, I had kind of a culture shock, so to speak, you know, because back there, military kids over in Sicily back then in the early 2000s and like the late 90s, you know, we dressed differently and talked differently. Our music taste was completely different and everything. And then like fitness was obviously the farthest thing from my mind. You know, I played a soccer league or whatever, you know, for many years. I was a foot fairy, so to speak. Coming back to America, you know, everything here seemed more rugged, more, a little bit, the kids were a bit more adult, mature. They definitely spoke more adult than I was at the time, and I kind of had to quickly adapt and adjust and everything. And there was a little bit of some very minor racial challenges, you know, being America's. I don't mean to go into a tangent of controversy here or anything, but you know, being like America's predominantly a white country, you know, and you know, growing up, especially after coming back from Sicily, where all the military families is very multiracial, going back here to like predominantly white country, and there was a lot of jokes, you know, mostly being Asian and everything, but you know, as growing up, you kind of have to roll with the punches, because you know, kids can be cruel, but that's just part of the trials that you have to go through, you know. And then as I started to enter high school, I started to adapt more and see if I can find my own little clique or calling. You know, I started there wasn't really a lot of Asian kids that I could hang out with in high school. They were just, most of them were way smarter than me. And I said before, I was like kind of a C plus guy. You know, they're doing like AP calculus and stuff like this. And I'm more of a basic algebra guy. So that was more of a kind of finding out who I was. I remember this guy, it was a friend of mine, we still keep in contact, named Bobby Rosen, who was heavily into bodybuilding at that time. And this was my first time in high school freshman, that I've seen someone that is a bodybuilder. So in our freshman years, you know, we had some classes together, we talked here and there, but then I noticed every month he's just started to get enormously bigger, more muscular. I was like, how is this guy doing this? By the time we were at our senior year, he was massive. He was bigger than like a lot of the football players, like muscular wise. You know, you just, when he walks down the hall, I couldn't help but notice like he had like perfect posture. Everything was proportioned. Like he looked exactly like those comic book heroes that I described. And later on, I find out like, you know, like he's doing like teenage bodybuilding shows and everything. And like, that was initially basically my first real exposure, a glimpse of it, to that entire world. So then, you know, it didn't really hit me back then. You know, I was still young and I was still living my life as a teenager and everything. And it wasn't until after I finished high school later on down the road, where we recap back to when I was like in my 21, was when things started to kind of click, and I remembered him from back then, and I was like, okay, let's give this a go. And then here we are, you know.
So a couple of things I want to kind of pull out of you, Eric, from your childhood. First of all, the influence of your parents. I mean, obviously growing up in a military family, generally speaking, for probably most people that are going to be watching and listening to this podcast, that's a unique experience that we don't know about. So obviously you mentioned some of the challenges of that, but the influence of your parents, what was your relationship like with them growing up? Did your mom and your dad really have a positive influence on you? Did you struggle with your relationship with your parents? Did they, leave anything lasting with you in terms of kind of something or some things that you carry with yourself still to this day? Just talk about your parents and what their influence was on you, if you don't mind, please.
Mom and dad have always been supportive in everything I do, maybe even spoiling me a little, honestly. Usually anything I would ask for, my dad would work very hard to get what I wanted. You know what I mean? Like the newest game system would come out, and my dad would say, oh, we can't afford it. And then usually for my birthday or for Christmas, all of a sudden it was there. So mom and dad really made sure I had the best childhood possible. I would always participate in like these sport youth leagues and everything. They always made sure that I had friends. I was always making sure that everything scholastically was working and clicking. I have a little sister, and she was also always supported. I mean, we fight a lot, not a lot, but as much as normal siblings do. But we get along mostly all the time. In fact, we rarely fight now, but when we do fight, it's like a big explosive one, but it's always love at the end. Mom and dad initially wanted me, as with any child, to be some kind of a occupation that brings immediate prestige, like a doctor or something, that those titles bring immediate prestige to the family. And that's what they really shot for me, so growing up, I had this idea, like, I want to be a psychiatrist. I want to be a psychologist, because I would watch movies, and sometimes the crazy gangster or something would have a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and I'm like, it looks like something that would pique my interest. So then, throughout my school years, I would just kind of like focus on that. And mom and dad would always be like, yeah, just focus on your schooling, focus on that. And then, being a C+ student, they kind of figured like, how is this going to happen? But they rolled with the punches anyway. Traveling a lot with dad. My dad would always be out and about, being in the military. So I would say I would see him about half the time, because sometimes he would be out for like 8 months to a year, and it would just be by my mom. So mom had to pick up the slack of dad also. So, occasionally I would act out, but she would let the discipline dad. And I had kind of that fear, because, dad has, you're a real dad if you have dad voice. And, he had that down pat. So he would just call me on the phone and be like, what'd you do? And I'll be like, oh, crap, here it comes. And, I kind of straightened out more and more as the years came out. But mom and dad, basically, as far as bodybuilding goes, they never in their wildest imaginations would be like, wow, my son is a professional bodybuilder. Like, where the hell did this come from? They didn't really see it when I started working out for anything. And then once we came back to the States, and then my dad retired, and we permanently started living here. They live in Delaware. So like, they're not super far if I ever want to visit for dinner or something. But we still talk about like, what the hell happened? You want to be a psychologist, and now you're like a pro bodybuilder now? Like, this is completely not exactly what we thought would ever happen. But mom and dad have always been a good influence. They always made sure that I had anything I wanted within reason when I asked for it. And, if I was a bad kid, they made sure I got the appropriate discipline. I'm not saying I deserved it, but I probably did. And they just made sure they taught me to just kind of stay out of trouble, So I've been doing that, and I've never really been in trouble ever in my life, because they kind of taught me that always talk with respect and kind of just be a good neighbor, really. And, other than that, I've been kind of living by that guideline. Yeah. So mom and dad, thanks.
Excellent, man. All right. So you kind of answered my second question that I want to draw out of you from your childhood. And that was kind of like what you were thinking about doing, once you got into high school and after high school, and you said like a psychologist and things like that. Now, once you graduated high school, Eric, where did life take you? Did you go to college? Did you start working? Talk to us up to that point of 21 when you started lifting weights. So once you graduated, what happened?
After graduation, I joined the military. So I joined the military, joined the Navy. I'm still in the Navy. So coming up on almost 15 years now. So it's been a minute. Well, once I joined the Navy, because dad was in the Navy, sister is also in the Navy. So I kind of, excuse me, I kind of understood this lifestyle. And it, once I got older, I kind of realized that everything that I had, almost everything I had, was thanks in part to what the Navy gave my dad. And he kind of just passed it on to me. So, seeing as I knew exactly how to live, I knew exactly the lifestyle and everything. That's when I signed up. And then after boot camp, went over to Virginia, where I started training as an intel analyst, so I can decipher classified information. I can't go too much more in detail than that, but I still do that, but now at kind of a more senior level. So now, fast forward a few years, still working with the Navy. I'm now attached to a human intelligence unit that I can't say where exactly, but now it's a far thing from bodybuilding, obviously. And the military is very supportive. They know of my bodybuilding background. So other than that, I'm just kind of like seeing how long I can ride the whole military thing out before, if I really want to pursue bodybuilding at a even more serious level than it is now. People are all like, what are you talking about serious? You're professional already. I'm sitting there going like, yeah, it's serious, but maybe there's steps to this. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And again, man, that's why I love the podcast, because from your Instagram, I never would have guessed or known that you were in the military, because I didn't see anything on there. Maybe that's the way you want it, but that's so cool.
Yeah.
So,
my Instagram, I keep that like exclusively bodybuilding related. But yeah, so I am that is my 9 to 5, so to speak. Like I work for Uncle Sam. So
well, I mean that was that was a surprise to me, and I think it's great. Just there's so much to be learned, I believe, from military experience, and I think more people having that opportunity to go into the military, it would be great for our country. But anyways, now one question I want to ask, and then we're going to fully dive into all things bodybuilding. The balance between your career, your job, which is the military, and bodybuilding, what does that look like? Is it a pretty easy balance with where you're at in terms of your career in the military now, or is it difficult? What does that look like?
At the beginning of my military career, it was not easy at all. In fact, it was not a balance. It was like, I would say 80% military and 20% bodybuilding. Like I had to devote the majority of my time to the military, only because at the beginning I was so junior, I was new, and it was like I had no say or pull or power in anything I do in my schedule or otherwise. You know, it was like trying to swim against the current. You know, anytime I wanted to do anything related to bodybuilding or whatever. Obviously, when you're bottom of the totem pole, what say do you have? So I kind of just rolled with that for a few years until eventually I eventually got enough pull to kind of be like, all right, I could be my own person, so to speak. And you know, this is kind of like the culture of the military, really. You know, you gotta get your stripes in. So that's kind of where the balance is. And now it's a lot more flexible. To the point where it's not even stressful anymore.
So are you in the rank of chief then now, or what's your rank?
No, not. I'm sorry. Can you see me?
No, it keeps going to blank. Somebody must be calling you, huh?
Yeah. Don't worry, I got that.
So
No, I'm a second class.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Because I know usually, generally speaking, once you move up, I was in the Navy for a very short time. I don't really talk about it a lot, but I know, you know, once you kind of move up in that rank within the military, there can be a lot more flexibility, like you were saying. So maybe as you move up, that'll provide even more flexibility for your bodybuilding. Now, Eric, let's kind of transition into all things bodybuilding. So you already told us you started kind of lifting weights, just kind of playing around a little bit at 21. About a year later, you joined the gym. Now, it sounds like you had people asking you, you know, hey, do you compete and stuff like that? And usually from the guests that I've brought on the podcast, that's a pretty good indication that if people are asking you if you compete and you don't, that's a good indication that you might have some potential within bodybuilding. So why don't you talk about when the first time you kind of decided, hey, I'm going to try this competing thing. And then why don't you just unpack your competition history from there, if you don't mind?
When they first started asking me to compete, it was more of like, I would be like, nah, man, I don't. And in the back of my mind, it would be kind of like an ego stroke, and it would let me know like, all right, cool, I look good. So I kind of rolled with that, kind of looking like an off-season bodybuilder for years. And eventually, come 2018, I went to this gym in Bear, Delaware, and I wanted just for a change of scenery, you know, because sometimes when you're training in the same old environment, you just want to change of pace, just at least even for like a day. So that was what's going on with me. And when I went there, there's a coach there who's my current coach now, named David Pulcinella. He kind of approached me on the floor while I was training. And then once he went up to me, you know, he's like, hey, so do you compete or anything? I was like, no, I compete. And then he goes like, why? I was like, I've never competed. I just like looking good. And then that's when he gave me his card. And then I was all like, okay, so he's like a nutritionist, you know, he does bodybuilding. He has athletes and everything. So that's when we went into like a month after that, I went to my first consultation with him to see what he's all about. And then he explained to me that I have potential to really make a dent in the industry. And at this time, I had no idea what even the NPC was. You know, anything related to the formal industry and the leading authorities of fitness, I had no idea. I had no idea who the NPC was, the IFBB. I didn't know who the Mannion family was. I didn't know any of these people. Steve Weinberger, forget about it. I don't know who he was. Like, I had no idea. And once I explained my goals to him, like, I just want to look good. And then he kind of goaded me more to be like, but what if it can turn out better than you can imagine? And I was like, all right. So this is kind of like he's fishing. So I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. So that's when I signed up with him. And then we tried to see what my weak points are and everything. So then after that, I kind of we went into an immediate prep the following year in 2019. And this would be my first show for the Delmarva Classic. So then after my grueling first prep and kind of realizing what a bodybuilding prep really is, I did my first show, the Delmarva Classic 2019. And I swept and I took everything, every class, the whole true novice, class win, overall, all that jazz. And from that day, I was hooked. I was like, okay, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep winning. I want to see if I can keep winning. And then from there, I went into the my first national level show, which would also be, this would be my second show total. And this would also be my first like real loss. Like, you know, I was always used to winning and just being a big guy and everything. And being at the national stage was, especially backstage, I felt unbelievable pressure. You know, from the regional level to the national level was a very eye-opening experience to me. And just looking around, I was like, holy crap, everybody's got abs, everyone's big, people are bigger than me and everything. And I think during that show, I did make the first call out, but I did not make the top 5. I think I was 6th that show. So that's when I thought that, all right, maybe bodybuilding's not for me or everything. And that's when Dad said something a little bit profound to me, and it still resonates with me to this day. So I was feeling, you know, very down about it. And he said to me, he said, son, you got 6th. And I was like, yes, I know, Dad. And he goes, but if you got 7th or higher, you don't matter. I was like, that's a pretty weird way to put it. So I asked him to explain. And he said to me, like, when you got 6, that means someone in that top 5, they considered you. That means they looked at you and they were comparing you to each of those guys, and you were considered. So that kind of brought a new perspective to me. And it made me think like, okay, maybe I can really do this and give it another shot. So then I looked at my feedback and I looked at my pictures and everything. And it was like, I really need to take it to a new level if I want to do this seriously. So then after delving back into the lab and going into my coach and explaining the game plan, you know, I went over to him and I told him, like, how am I going to do this? And so that's when he told me, you have to do it the old school way, the Rich Gaspari way, the freaking Lee Haney way. And then he was like, my way, because, you know, he was competing back in the 90s when bodybuilders looked completely like different animals than they did today. And the training kind of worked, you know. That following year, it was 2020, I went into the Capital Grand Prix, and where I won my class, and then I earned my national qualification again. So that's when I thought, all right, let's go back into North American, which was my national show. And funny enough, back when I placed 6th, I met another bodybuilder there who placed 7th. His name is Kellen Wilson. And we've been competing side by side against each other. And so he told me, I mean, we had a good initial relationship. We still do to this day. And so I kicked it off with him. And then the following year in 2021, I ran into Kellen again at North Americans, and he looked even better. And, you know, we started to form like this kind of rivalry going on. And then after we competed, I was, you know, I moved up in placing. I'm in the top 5 now. I was 3rd. I was 1 placing short from my my goal, which is the pro card. But at the same time, it was, you know, I was happy, but at the same time, I was devastatingly sad. Not only because I lost, but it's because Kellen beat me. So not only did Kellen beat me, he won his class and he won the overall. He became the North American overall for 2021, North American champion for classic physique. And I was like, damn it. So, after I wrote him a congratulatory note and explained to him, like, we're going to have to put the rivalry on the brakes for now, because, you're kind of on a different level and I have to see if I can still prove mine. I kind of went back. I was sad. I didn't know what to do. And then I went back to coach, and coach told me, like, we have to, if you really want this, you got to want it more than ever. So that's when we went back into the lab. And then I will say, yeah. So training up until May of 2021, I was completely natural. Yeah, completely natural up until May of 2021. And then once I started using beginning stages of enhancement, that's when I got my third placing at North Americans. So then I talked to my coach, and then he's, after asking what to do, he goes like, it's time to be a real bodybuilder. So I was like, okay, let's be a real bodybuilder. And then, after he gave me a proper protocol, so to say, went into NPC Nationals literally 3 months later. And after 3 months, from September to December, I got bigger, I got harder, I came in more crisp, and I came in much fuller than anything I've ever imagined. Led me to my overall win and my earning of my pro card at NPC Nationals 21.
So let's talk about your decision then, Eric. You said up until May of 2021, you were natural. Let's talk about that decision to kind of start using performance enhancing drugs. Was that a difficult decision for you? Why don't you just walk us through, as much as you would like, the mindset for you specifically of going from natural to enhanced, because I think this type of information and talk from IFBB pros is really important, especially with the younger people. So what was that mindset like? How did you kind of finally make that decision? Was it a tough decision? Walk us through that, if you don't mind.
I initially started playing with the idea. And when I mean playing with it, it was like kind of like if I do this, I'll gain 100 pounds. And then it was like, nah. And then it was like a passing thought, literally for like a 10-second thought. I started just dangling with that. And then as I started to get more exposure to the bodybuilding world and I started to win more shows, I started to think, like, what is my real potential? And then that's when, for years, I played with this. For years, I was all like, what can I really push my body to? You know what I mean? Like, I was natural for basically the bulk of my bodybuilding time. And it was important for me to go like, you know what? I got to absolutely push my natural limit. So it was important to me to see how far I can actually go without help of anything else. And this took me well into like maybe 11 years or so of actually being completely natural to pushing the outer limits to see what my body's truly capable of. And I knew the sign was I was at my actual limit was when I went an entire year and some change of absolutely making no gain in weight, no progress in my lifts or in terms of how much I lifted or my reps. And that went on for an entire year and a half, and, in bodybuilding, progress is everything, because if you're not progressing, you're losing out on time and you're regressing. And to me, that was like kind of devastating, because like, is this really how far as I could go? And I literally I used all of my 20s all the way up into like the age I'm at now, you know, like 33, to finally kind of like wrestle with myself and be like, it's time to finally do this at like the more serious, not talked about, but the more serious level if I want to actually be like a real bodybuilder. So then I pulled the trigger, and then the moment I did, my body responded at a resounding rate. I started to see rapid progress, and which was kind of normal for anyone that would start enhancement. But I was very smart about this. I would see my doctor regularly, get my blood work done regularly, and make sure everything is running on, you know, very smoothly before, if I decide to want to throw any other kind of enhancement in there or anything. And so far, you know, everything is good. I'm healthier than I've ever been in my entire life. And I don't think I ever regret the decision. But it did take me a long time to kind of finally figure out like whether or not I want to do this. Because, you know, once you start, you don't go back. And I really needed that time. That entire decade I used to actually finally make that decision.
I appreciate you touching on that, Eric. Now, I want to talk about your training a little bit. Coach Dave, your coach, you know, he said that he competed, which I've heard of him before. He competed back in the 90s, kind of the just maybe a different type of bodybuilding, a different style of bodybuilding, different training than maybe what we see nowadays currently, again, generally speaking. But how has your training evolved, if it has, over the years, and what type of training style methods do you currently use?
Back then, I was like, I was addicted to PRs, as with anyone at that young age. You know, you see the numbers go up, the ego gets higher. You start thinking like, oh, I got a 1 rep max, a new 1 rep max every week. And then I stopped to see progress like that. At the beginning, you know, with newbie gains and everything, you see some progress, but then it's kind of starting stagnant. And then I was less invested in the numbers, and I was more invested in the look in the mirror. And then once I started reading up on like fancy words like 4 years into training, 4 or 5 years into training, I finally found the word like hypertrophy. And I was all like, what is that? It's like, I had to look that up. I was like, oh, this is what they do. So then that's when my training style went from like extremely heavy for 6 and below to challenging weight to 6 to 12. And then it changed to 8 to 12. And now my training style is I train very heavy for high reps, you know, so almost all my lifts I go to failure now, because, you know, with one thing with bodybuilding is that with their training is like everyone has a different kind of niche and a different style to make progress. But I think it's pretty universal that training till failure is going to promote growth. And I think the majority of bodybuilders will agree with me that pushing to that failure point is pretty much a guarantee of getting results, as long as there's nutrition feeding into that also. So that's part of my training style right now. It's very hard, it's very heavy, very high rep, and it's almost always till failure, you know. Very standard bodybuilder, you know. Split muscle groups, 5 or 6 days a week with 1 or 2 rest days in there. Very textbook. Yeah, very textbook bodybuilder.
So what is, if you don't mind me asking, because we all love to kind of hear about this from pros, what's your current training split look like?
My current training split kind of prioritizes my weaknesses. So a strong part of my body on my physique is my legs, without a doubt, is my legs and my shoulders. So surprisingly, I actually only hit legs once every 2 or 3 weeks. And so far it's worked for me. And I hit my chest and my back like 3 times a week, because those are actually my weak body parts. Even to my feedback from my last show, they said, you need a bigger back, you need a bigger chest. I was like, well, okay, so let's keep doing it. And it's been my weak points for years now. And even now at the pro level, they tell me they're still your weak point. I'm like, okay. And I asked about my legs, and they go like, nope, legs are fine. I'm like, all right. So I guess once every 2 or 3 weeks for the legs is okay. As for like arms, very seldom. I don't really do them. Maybe once every 2 weeks. But the bulk of my arm development is usually from like rowing movements with my back and like just, standard pull-ups and everything. But almost all my lifts are like have heavy compounds of some sort, because I feel like my body responds better when it has a lot more assisting muscles recruiting the main muscle. So I can kind of like, my hormones would be like more adaptive in like creating that muscle tissue.
Excellent, man. Okay, so let's step back. We've been going for about 45 minutes. I want to be respectful of your time. We'll wrap up here in a bit. Let's go back into competing. So you earned your IFBB pro card by winning the overall at the NPC Nationals in 2021. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So talk about, generally speaking, again, your competition history and competing career up to this point is pretty short. Some people are going for that pro card for a decade. But you had the goal of getting your pro card. You won the overall at Nationals last year. Talk about that moment. I mean, even though you hadn't been competing for very long, but you went from natural to enhanced, which that's a process. You already kind of shared that with us. And it seems like by going that route, it paid off, and you had this goal of getting your pro card, and you're really starting to take bodybuilding serious. Then you get the pro card. Once you won your pro card and you actually won the overall, which is very prestigious, talk about the feelings and the emotions and what was going through your mind once you knew you got your pro card, you won the overall, and then maybe move us forward up to the point of your decision of making your pro debut at the Toronto Pro a couple weeks ago.
Leading up to the show at Nationals, I was more, I guess I was more aggravated than anything, because my loss from September just being so close, and for the fact that I lost to another bodybuilder that I was just looking forward to beating specifically, added to the burn, it made me really kind of push more harder than ever for this win at Nationals, to get the pro card. And it was the fact that he was an overall winner that made me want to be like, I can't just settle for the pro card now. So, I wanted a title also, because he had a title and I wanted one. And backstage during the show, I was just very zoned in, very focused, very like, I don't even feel like smiling. And looking back at all my pictures and all the replays and everything at Nationals, I was just grimacing up there the entire time. I was in the zone. I was like battle ready, so to speak. When they announced once they moved me to the middle, once they called my name, not my name, my number in the first call out, the moment they announced my number in the first call out, just bringing us all to line us up, I already knew. I was like, I already know, I got this. And then they moved me to the middle, and I already knew I was not going to be moved. We didn't even start quarter turns or anything yet. I just already knew. And my emotion at that time was, it's okay to be greedy. I don't want a pro card. Like, I want everything. I just want to beat everybody right now. And once I got the pro card, I didn't really allow I didn't really allow myself to be celebrating. Just went back to my room. I put my feet up to get drier, very, very old school bodybuilder. And I just sat in the dark, grimacing like fucking Batman or something. A few hours would pass, and I would make myself drier and drier. And then one leading up to the show, we would do finals. And then once they announced my name for the pro card, it was just like, all right, I'm ready to do this again. And then come the overall battle, once they announced my number for the overall, that's when I was kind of like relaxed a bit. And I was all like, okay, I did it. And my mind was basically like, I looked into the lights and I couldn't see a single face. All I saw was Chris Bumstead's weird smile and Ian Valier's fake smile looking at me. I was like, oh yeah, I got to go get the trophy. So, picking up the trophy, and I was like, wow, this is, the moment I picked it up, I was thinking to myself, like, this is literally the heaviest thing I've ever lifted, because like picking that up, it felt like a culmination of all my years of training and everything was now into this trophy. And, it was the sweetest moment. And I will never forget the warmth of the lights on my face. The announcement of my name, I could vaguely hear, even through all the deafening of like the clapping and the cheers and everything, I vaguely hear my family. And that made it like all sweet. So it was very much like my parents can finally brag to their friends, like, what does your son do? Oh, he's a professional bodybuilder, and I gave that to my parents. And I don't even keep the trophy here at my house. I keep it over there with my parents' house, like a little thing for them to be like, look what my son did. So and then after nationals, off season is kind of like a down pace, slower moving time. And I was still kind of riding that wave of like, wow, I made pro, like that's cool and everything. And I felt that I was already very comparable to some of the pros on the current circuit. And after a very short off season, literally not even 6 months, that's when I decided I wanted to go to the Chicago Pro because I felt like it would build enough size. But then as I started getting bigger rapidly, thanks to the rebound after post show, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
That's when I told myself that, I think it's time to see where I really stack up. So then I decided to, instead of the Chicago Pro, it was still a far way off. It was like almost like end of summer or something, or like almost near the end of summer, like the tail end of it. And I was all like, that's too far. And I talked to my coach, and it's like, if I'm ready now, I'm ready now. And he's all like, okay, what do you want to do? And that's when I said to the coach, give me a day to think about it. So then I was scrolling through Instagram, and I go to Kellen's Instagram. And this guy doesn't like to drop hints or anything. He's social network, his stories always blank, everything. It kind of pisses me off. But, more than so my pro debut, I wanted to get back at him. I wanted to see if I could. So I waited to see if he would post something before I made a move. And then finally he made some kind of post. I forget. It was like a physique update. And he's all like 12 weeks out. And I'm all like, what show is 12 weeks out? So I literally looked at the 2022 schedule. It was like 12 weeks out from today. And he's in Canada. So I was like, let me look at the Canadian shows. And then there it was, Toronto Pro, exactly 12 weeks out from the day he made that post. And so I messaged him that same day. And I was all like, I'll see you in Toronto, bro. And he's like, no, man, I don't want to see you again. So I was like, nah, bro, too late. So then I emailed the office for my card and my contract. I signed it, and I was like, all right, it's time to prep for the show. And then I was fairly confident leading up into the show. I felt like this is just, you do this at like a professional level now. So it's like, there's no need to be nervous or anything. But the only thing that changes is that now everybody you're facing is like former national champions. These are like real deal cream of the crop. You know, these are world class. So going backstage, it was a lot more at the national level. It was very intense, the atmosphere. But at the pro level, going backstage in the pump up, it was possibly the most mellow thing I've ever felt. Everybody was super relaxed, especially the other pros. Everyone was joking with each other. Everyone was like just talking to each other in one group. It's because it was just such a small number of us, you know, and that kind of made me understand that at that level, you know, the higher you go, there's going to be fewer and fewer and fewer of us. So it was more like, I felt like I was at a regional show again, you know, except everybody's like high class or whatever. And this show really opened up my eyes and kind of made me realize exactly how big a gap in caliber it is at the national level at the NPC versus the IFBB pro level. And I was sitting there.
Somebody's
like,
at your door there, Eric.
And it made me realize that I have a lot of work to do, especially at a level where I'm trying to dethrone the reigning king, who is obviously worlds above everyone right now, for now. But following my placing, it humbled me a lot. It made me kind of realize that, you know, I made it to the top at one point, but now I'm at the bottom of something even higher. And, you know, I'm at the bottom of the ladder again, so to speak. And I'm like sitting here going like, man, I've done this before. I've crawled from the bottom before. So what's another climb? So now going forward, I do have a show in mind, but I'm still kind of gauging my options. But I will say before the Olympia, I will give it one more shot to see if I can get my qualification. I'm not sure which show yet, but I do know I will give it one more shot. So that's where my mind is right now.
Now, the question that I have to ask is, did you get revenge on Kellen, or did he beat you again?
Oh, hell no, that bastard beat me again. God damn it. We were talking about it backstage. As you know, I'm eating some candy, and he's sitting there just kind of with his big oversized t-shirt, just kind of grinning at me. And, you know, it was good natured. I really wanted to beat him, but, you know, we have a good relationship. And I just kind of looked at him as I'm eating my candy, and I was just shaking my head, still my tan on and everything on, and just my flip flops all oiled up, eating candy. I'm all like, God, you bastard. And so we shook hands, and he's going to be doing the Vancouver Pro, and he's asking me if I'm going to meet him there again. I'm all like, nah, man, I've had enough of you right now. And so we have that nice little bond rivalry going, and I'm pretty sure for the next couple of years we're going to at least be seeing each other once a year throughout our careers.
That's cool, man. I think having some of that rivalry within bodybuilding is just makes things a little bit more fun. Now we're going to wrap it up here. I want to ask you, Eric, kind of a couple last questions here in closing, but where do you see yourself in terms of an ultimate bodybuilding goal? I mean, you said something about getting that qualification. So is your ultimate bodybuilding goal to step on the Olympia stage? Is it to place top 10 in the Olympia? Is it to win the Olympia? Like right now, at your age, at this stage where you're at, climbing back up that tall mountain as an IFBB pro, what is that ultimate bodybuilding goal for yourself?
Ultimate bodybuilding goal. You know, at this age, you know, bodybuilding is a young man's game. You know, can't do this forever. I do understand that as I get older, my muscle will mature more. It starts to gain characteristics about it that the judges just love. But, you know, I'm running against time here, you know, and you can't get that back. My ultimate goal is right now, my ultimate goal is to just be an Olympian. At that is like this moment. That is my goal, to be an Olympian, to say that I count myself among the top most elite bodybuilders in the world, to step on that prestigious stage. You know, it's one thing to become pro, and which is cool, you know, like I'm a professional bodybuilder. You do this at a very high level, but you do this at a world-class level, you know. But then to step on the Olympia stage, you're saying, you know, you are the best of just a literal handful of people on the planet. You know, I want that kind of glory. Later on, you know, the goals will get more riskier. You know, for right now, it's just to be an Olympian. If I ever reach that, after that, it'll be like, okay, break into the top 5. But right now, just stepping on the O would make me very content.
Excellent, man. Okay, kind of the last question here, and then I'm going to turn the platform over to you to kind of just give any shout outs, any final thoughts or words. Before we do that, my last question again, what would you say to your younger self as you were getting into bodybuilding, or what would you like to share maybe with some of the younger audience, whether that's an age or just people that are starting to think about getting into competing, or they're thinking about crossing over from natural to enhance? You know, there's a lot of beginnings within life and within bodybuilding, this whole experience that we love and we're passionate about. But what are some words that maybe you would speak to a younger version of yourself or a younger person specifically about bodybuilding, Eric?
What I would say to my younger self is to take the dive sooner than later, and always press harder than before. And for younger people getting into bodybuilding, like I would say, if you're younger than like 20, 22 or so, and you want to get into bodybuilding, I would say you should first prioritize everything in your life first, regarding like school and family and all that. Bodybuilding is very, very time consuming, and it's extremely demanding. The thing about bodybuilding is that you can only get out of it what you put in. And at majority of the time, if that's not 100%, then you're not going to get anything out of it. You know, you have to put almost everything into bodybuilding to be even remotely decent at it. So, I mean, for the younger people, just if you really want to do this sport, you have to really reflect on yourself and be like, can you be absolutely committed to this? You know, there are times where it sucks, but you got to love those times that suck. This is one of those sports where it's 24/7. The amount of sleep reflects your progress. What you eat reflects your progress. You know, how long you stay in the sun will reflect your progress. Literally everything you do reflects your progress. It is 24/7, no doubt. And, you know, as far as like from the natural to enhancement thing, unless you are diehard, strictly dedicated to like, I want to become a pro, I will become a pro, I will compete at a world-class level, I would say if your ambition and your goal is not at there, or you're already at there, there is no need at all to touch enhancement of any form. There is, you want to have a good body, you can have a good body. You don't need enhancement for that. You want to get girls with a nice body, you want to attract other girls, you can. You don't need enhancement for that. But unless you're going to be at a world-class level, there's no need to touch anything. Stay natural.
Well said, my man. All right. So Eric, first of all, before I kind of turn things over to you to share any thoughts or have give you the opportunity to give any shout outs, I just want to say thank you for taking some time out of your day to share your story, kind of just share your bodybuilding experience. It's greatly appreciated, man. I just love, like I said, bringing on these top level athletes and coaches, and we just kind of get to peel back the layers of what's going on behind the muscle. So thank you so much, Eric. And then,
man, I'm top level. Thanks, man.
yeah. No, it's good, man. And before I do the outro, if you have any final thoughts, any final words, any shout outs, any sponsors, any thank yous, anything of that nature, the floor is yours. And then I'll wrap it up here when you're done.
Okay. I just want to thank my sponsors, Gaspar Nutrition, for keeping me in shape and what I need to function in this occupation. My family for always supporting me, even though they wanted me a doctor, I got a pro bodybuilder instead. That's kind of cool. My sister Amanda for shouldering a lot of my burden lately, and you know, I got you back, sis. Don't worry. And other than that, you know, just for the young people, just keep pressing forward. You know, you can't sail a ship if you haven't, you know, you can't be captain of a ship if you haven't even sailed yet. You know what I mean? You can't cross the ocean if you're too scared to lose sight of the shore. So just take the dive and it'll turn out better than you can imagine. I promise.
Excellent. All right, Eric, I appreciate it, my man.
All right. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. All of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, thank you so much. Just a couple quick things here as we wrap up today's conversation with Eric. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Very important because I release all of these episodes first on YouTube, and then I distribute them to iTunes and the other popular podcast platforms where you can find Behind the Muscle. But if you haven't hit subscribe on YouTube, make sure you do that, please. Greatly appreciate it. Also, take this episode, this conversation with Eric, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Behind the Muscle, tag Eric, so that we know you specifically listened to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.